Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode.
Hello, Tend Her Wild podcast listeners. Today we are very excited to have a guest with us. Her name is Christina Woods. And I'm going to tell you a little about Christina, but welcome, Christina. We're excited to have you.
Oh, thank you.
She's coming to us from California, and she's an internationally recognized clinical hypnotherapist, rapid transformational therapist, empowerment coach, and Reiki master who leads women to realize their worth, shed old programs, and align with their authentic selves. I think we're all in the right room.
Yeah, I think we have a lot in common here.
Combining her 3 decades of corporate leadership, Christina has turned her personal triumph over adversity into a beacon of hope for hundreds of women worldwide. Christina helps smart, capable women shatter self-sabotaging patterns and overcome burnout, forging new neural pathways for real, lasting, positive change. She empowers them to find the strength and wisdom within, establish healthy boundaries, and create lives filled with purpose and fulfillment. So we are so excited to dig into your work and your story and what led you to this transformational work. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
it's fun to have 2 of you too.
I know. We have fun together here.
Yeah.
We always ask the first question, Christina, the same to all of our guests. And we like to know about people's first decade. So those first 10 years that seem to be quite impactful. They really mold us and shape us. And throughout the process of, I don't know, at this point, interviewing hundreds of women, we keep observing how there's such a through line that things that happen in those early years show up later. What we learn, what we're interested in. And so we would love to get a snapshot of what it was like for you growing up in those first 10 years.
Yeah, that's such an important question. And I would say, as I reflect on most of the unwilding, rewilding moments in my life, they're based on those first 10 years. So I was raised primarily by a single mom. I'm the oldest of 4. And I had teen parents, so wasn't expected. And I grew up in a pretty chaotic life, chaotic home. My parents divorced when I was about 5. And I would say most of my first 10 years just felt a lot like survival. Mom was working a lot of different jobs to survive herself, and didn't really have a lot of those skills, her nervous system, her life skills to navigate all the ups and downs of a teen mom. At that point, there was 2 of us, my brother and I. And so I just really took on the role of let's make life easy for mom and brother and perform, and turned into a little chameleon, very, very hypervigilant and sensitive, and could read a room like no other. A lot of volatile babysitters and people in and out of the home. And so those first 10 years, there was abuse. There was sexual abuse, physical abuse, a lot of emotional abuse. So survival, perfectionism, be the good girl. I was very obedient, and I took on the role of, I'm going to take care of my brother. I'm going to teach him how to read. I'm going to put him in my room when things are loud, out in the hallway, out in the middle of the night. So that was very, very early on who I became. I mean, I can even remember as early as 2 years old. And this has come up many, many times in meditations and hypnosis and moments, even as early as 2, saying, who's going to take care of me? Because these people can't take care of me. I'm on my own. So just that energy of I'm on my own, even as deep as, where's God? Where's the universe? Who's behind me?
Mm.
So very I'm on my own survival. Let's kind of morph into a good girl who learns how to do everything right. So all that approval, validation, and sort of calm my own life outside, because things inside around this home and place are not that calm.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I'd like to keep fast forwarding you into the next pieces of your life, because it sounds like your way of managing it was to be good and to be easy and to hold it all together and to, be the helper and the good girl. And these are all themes that we've talked about so much on this podcast. And
Yeah.
Kate and I both relate to the good girl phenomenon and towing the line and getting the good grades and following the rules. So then how did that keep showing up as your life proceeded into your, young adulthood and on from there?
Yeah. I didn't have this persona of, I got the good grades, I got the good jobs, homecoming queen, cheerleader, that type of thing, the achiever. But I always had a little bit of an edge, a little sassy, little rebel type of thing, but always still did what I was supposed to do. And so, I was the first to go to college. I was just really, really committed to not being what I grew up in. That was really my number one goal. Like, let's not do that. Let's not be that. I will not do that. And so I was laser focused on I'm going to prove everyone that I'm different and not going to look back, and I don't need anyone to help me. And so college, corporate life, VP, traveling around, six figures, uh, and got married, had two kids, and really just became this woman who said yes to everything and had absolutely no concept of saying yes to myself, was never role modeled. In fact, it was frowned upon. Like, why would you do that? Put yourself last. Like, that's selfish. That is, even an ancestral lineage of Italian women who, had a lot of pride in never putting themselves first. You
Yeah, that
always,
martyr.
Yeah.
oh, martyr. I was
Yeah.
even told you are the oldest girl and you always put your family first. If I can't cook, you cook, no
Yeah.
matter what. You're tired, who cares? You do
That's
what
right.
you need to do.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it goes. Even when it was time to go off to college, my mother had at that point gotten married and had a few more kids and then got divorced. And it was like, well, you're here to help me. This is just the way it goes. You're not going off. You're going to go local. And it was just not a discussion. You need to be local and help me. It was like, okay, you know, that's just end of discussion. It
Right.
wasn't an option. So, but I really did very well in the corporate world because, there was a structure, there was a map, a blueprint to follow. But I also was that person that at 2 a.m. you could call and say, do this report. We need it by 8 a.m. Oh, I got that. I got that. And, it just turned into this, I'll bring the orange slices to the soccer game in the morning. And while I'm doing a conference call, while I'm going to travel, across the country.
Superwoman.
Yep.
Yeah, superwoman.
Yes.
And, that doesn't last very long.
No. And I'm so curious about what the tipping point was for you. If there was one, I'm assuming there was, when
Yeah.
suddenly that just wasn't going to work anymore. And what did that look like?
Yeah, it was I call it the garden moment. And I think we have all a moment. Mine wasn't a glamorous moment. I was gardening and I write about it in a chapter that's actually coming out this month called Invited to Remember. And it was just gardening in my pajamas, in my unglamorous, mixed matched, like TJ Maxx jammies or something. And I'm gardening and I hear a voice. My husband at the time, I'm picking up weeds and there's dog poop, and I can just kind of remember thinking, does anyone like want to help? The yard's not, no one's doing anything around here. I'm tired. I'm just like doing normal duties around the house. And he says, I'm going to the beach. And I remember feeling really like, why aren't you helping? Why am I alone? I'm just that continual feeling of you're sort of isolated, alone.
Yeah.
There's not really a partnership there. And in that moment, I heard a voice that said, when are you going to stop always thinking about what makes everybody else happy and think about yourself? And it wasn't a voice like an intuitive voice. It was outside of me.
Yeah. It's
it was,
beyond.
it was
Wow.
beyond.
Yeah.
And it stopped me. And it was literally the moment where I knew my marriage was over. I would leave corporate. I didn't do it immediately, but I literally knew nothing would be the same. I was so scared, but I also sort of laughed because it was sort of like being called out on, like your own BS. Like,
Yeah.
come on. When are you going to stop sort of blaming or looking outside and just literally start looking at what makes you happy?
Yeah.
Because this is not it. At that point, I'd had autoimmune diseases. I was on anxiety medication for about 5 years. I was having attacks where the babysitter would have to take me to ER. Nothing was good. I was in debt. Marriage wasn't good. My oldest son was about to go off to college, so I was starting to work through some, empty nest type of feelings, which are super scary. Like, wait, who am I going to be?
Right.
Lots of things.
Absolutely.
So
I think this
moment,
is so classic because I think I believe inevitably everyone goes through midlife crisis, awakening, whatever we want to call it, and like it just keeps building and building and building. And you said something that I want to circle back around to that I think our listeners can appreciate, is that you got the call, right? This great beyond gave you the
yes,
message. And then you said something after that that was so important. You said, and then I knew it, but it took me a while to unravel all of it. And so
yes,
it's not like there's an immediate change. You get some message, but then you had to go to all of the hard work to make different choices, to end things, to leave your corporate position.
sure.
So there is that, like, there's a process, I guess is what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a process. And, it was in that moment, I had always been, I'll say, into personal development or spirituality, but I really honestly skirted around some of the deeper things because I was afraid to go in deep.
Sure.
I would go on a couple retreats, some yoga type things. I knew if I went into certain poses, I might cry a little, like, ooh, what's that about? I had always been into those things, but therapy, some of the other books was like, I don't want to know what's inside there. I could tell there was things.
Right.
So in that moment, I knew inside intuitively, I need to go in deeper. I need to find out, a simple example. Why do I always go into debt, pay it off, go into debt again? What is that about? Like, why do I do that? Why do I have all the boxes checked and I'm not happy? Why do I always, feel these feelings? And one of the biggest ones was, and I didn't know it was shame at the time, but I always had walked around feeling bad. I just felt bad, like a bad person. And I knew I wasn't bad, but I really truly felt like a crappy person. And I thought I need to go find out what that is. So I started diving into therapy, and that's how I found hypnosis. And then I found EMDR, and I stayed committed and I did it. And I literally wanted to I would drive there and I wanted to just turn my car around.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Go. No, I didn't want to
So
go.
good for people to hear. That's really
Yeah.
important for people to hear because the work is hard.
It was hard. But I kept doing it and doing it. And that was where the unraveling, but also the compassion and the love. And actually, the abuse I spoke of that first 10 years, I had literally buried that until I was about 48. So that didn't come out until, I sort of knew, but I had labeled it as, something funky, inappropriate happened. I didn't put that. I even had to ask my therapist, is that abuse? Yes, that's abuse. Because it was so scary to go there. And what would that mean to me? And what was that about? And so obviously that was where a lot of compassion for myself and those parts of me, and understanding the survival, and where I felt abandoned, and even by a higher power.
Yeah. I have this image of you're kind of, I talk with my hands, but like the layers coming off, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just peeling them back. And I also want to reflect back to you that your comments about your body was giving you all these signals before
Oh,
this
yes.
happened, and how we've talked so much about that. It's in us, and it's shouting at us in all these different ways, but it takes time to recognize that's what's happening. And autoimmune seems to be very, I mean, we know
I
for
want to
women.
talk about this.
Yeah.
Because I have autoimmune problems, and I also had a repressed memory from my childhood that didn't come out till I was 40. So can we talk about, the autoimmune journey, and what, I guess my question is, what are your perspectives on it now that you're, sounds like a good deal through your healing journey? Do you see your autoimmune stuff as your body attacking? I mean, I think of it as the body's attacking itself. What is that all about? So I'm curious your take on it.
Yeah, I do medical intuitive work now, and that wasn't anything I ever expected. But so I do a lot of, a version of hypnosis with energy healing, where we speak to the body and we speak to organs, and weave it all together. But absolutely, the inability to express what we're feeling, and just suppressing what we feel, and all of those parts that weren't able to ask for help and support, and not being seen, not being heard, and honestly not feeling like even if we did, no one would be there. And just, the healing is in the witnessing. So now, just being able to see those parts and hear those parts, I think of all the modalities and things that I do and you do, and sometimes it's just allowing a client or myself to say, just sit with that part that needs to be seen and witnessed, and say, yeah, that was hard, and that was lonely, and yeah, you didn't have that type of mother's love. That's grief. Let's feel that and move through it, not stay stuck in it, not blame. But when we do that, I suffered vertigo during this time as well, which is, something that you said is our body speaking to us. Talk about a lack of balance in my life. My body was saying, you're so out of balance. When I look back, nothing felt balanced. And as soon as I recalibrated, because doctors couldn't figure out why, it wasn't my ear, wasn't this, with nothing. I went to about over 20 doctors, specialists everywhere. They're like, there's nothing wrong with your brain. There's nothing wrong with your ears. We don't know. And as soon as I moved through all these emotions, everything kind of got back into balance. Wow. I was like, all right.
You got to feel to heal.
Yeah. Yes.
So many of my clients suffer, but with autoimmune diseases, and it's usually just this ability to, allow these parts to be expressed and felt and witnessed, and allow some of this grief to come out.
Yeah.
And, we say feel to heal, but really, what is that? It's not just feeling it, but even just sitting with the grief and the loss of, okay, maybe we won't ever have the father we needed, or the mother, or the witness, or where did we feel we abandoned ourselves? I know I abandoned myself. I know I felt abandoned to survive. And what does that even mean? What did that feel like?
Yeah. Well, and you're someone who's really lived turning their pain into purpose, because now you are, witnessing and helping other women heal and recognizing that. How has that, so you left your marriage and your job.
I did.
How long did that take? Like,
So
was it a 10-year process? Was it a,
it was about 3 or 4 years. So, prior to, I had started to get the burnout on corporate, and Universe did one of those big massive layoffs with a company. At the time, I thought, when you're doing something 30 years, it's your identity, and oh, I can never do anything else. That's all I can do in the industry, you think, until you wise up and think, not really. I have other skills. I can do something else. And so I had a little bit of time off. And during that time, I did some inner work. So I did go back after that layoff into the same industry, but with the intention of, I'm going to do some healing during this time. I had no idea, no path of what that would look like. I thought it would look like maybe some coaching, maybe I really didn't have any idea until my own journey. And I found hypnotherapy, and it morphed into coaching. And when I started doing the work, it's about 4 years of school and work and phasing out of corporate, doing it part time, and then taking the leap of, okay, I guess I'm ready not to have a consistent paycheck and no health insurance. And, at that time, I still had a mortgage. I had kids in college at that time, and now I'm single. And, it's a leap of faith that this is your calling and your mission, and trusting that this is what you're meant to do, and your heart will lead you to finding the right clients that resonate with you. And a big part of this journey is also, I had never allowed myself to receive. Big part of my marriage failing was me not even allowing anything in, and truly believing no one was there for me, and allowing things to come in. I'm about to get married. I mean, this is part of my journey too. Like, what is receiving love, allowing money to flow in, trusting love to come in. I mean, was not my blueprint for those 10 years, those first 10 years. Why would I let anything in? That was not that safe. So, that was a big unraveling, until even recently, and still is. Like, ooh, you want to love me and help me, and okay,
is this safe? Can I let this in?
Right.
Yes,
this is new. Yeah.
This is new. And so it's nice to see all the things that come in. So a new career, a new life, clients, an abundant business, an engagement, things that you don't see or ever imagined.
Yeah. And I love that you are honest about the process, and it's never, we talk about it, and it's never over. It's there's just new stages of it, and new levels of it, new tools. And so, that's a beautiful way to kind of illustrate that this is not you figure out what's happened.
You go to 3 sessions and then you're better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. This sounds like it was a year's process for you.
Yeah, it is. And I
really
still go. I still go.
Exactly.
I still drive that path down Pacific Coast Highway down the beach. I still see her, not as frequently, but I need to get realigned and get, and I mean, in the spirit of being vulnerable, getting engaged was triggering. And, wait, I'm going to trust someone to that extent and let it in again. I've been hyper independent. Yeah. And so it triggered a little bit. It's like, wait, I got this. I'm going to let it in. So it's just a little recalibration. So we all need support, and those survival things, those are deep. And, it's okay to say, let me recalibrate, let me breathe through this, let me use all these tools let me have respect for the parts that did help me survive and move through this, but also that's not me anymore.
Yeah.
And this is me now. And let me calm all those beautiful parts down a little bit, and remind them they're okay. But hell yeah, it was triggering again.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Dr. Yoga Mama, which is all the many offerings I have blending psychological science with the ancient wisdom of yoga and mindfulness. Join me for a yoga class, a meditation weekend, an online course, Wisdom Wednesday, which is the first Wednesday of every month, or maybe even an international retreat like Greece in the fall of 2025. By providing spaces and experiences for people to look inward, it is my great honor to watch people become the change they wish to see in the world.
This podcast is being sponsored by Kate Moreland Coaching. As a transformational coach and an advocate for authenticity and well-being, I work to support individuals and organizations navigating challenging times. Whether you are an individual, a leader, or an organization, your creative power lies in your authenticity. Doing the work to understand your strengths and acknowledge the patterns and rocks that are in your way is the path to well-being. Whether it's your career or your relationship with yourself or others, transformational change begins within. To learn more, reach out to me at katemorelandcoaching.com.
You work with a lot of women, and that's our work too, is both primarily with women. And we on this podcast are talking a lot about this transition we're all going through as women. The feminine is rising, and yet patriarchy is not going down without a fight. And just more than ever, Kate and I see that this wild woman archetype is so important because she's instinctual and she's intuitive, and she's encouraging us to bust out of boxes and roar or growl when we need to growl, and
trust ourselves,
be in a pack of other people. So what are some of the things you're seeing with the women you work with that they're coming up against in this particular phase in our country in these times, that I think we probably can all relate to? I'm just curious what you're noticing out there in California.
My clients are all over the world, and what I love is it doesn't matter if they're in Pakistan or down the street, or anywhere. I am noticing the biggest little shakeup, and I love it so much because they are really rising in their power, in their voice.
Yeah.
Rattling some cages. I will, and this isn't my goal, but I will say there are some partners, coworkers, spouses, people that will even say, "What is Christina doing with you? What's happening? I'm not that happy about that." I've had them blame me for things. I'm like, sometimes we're not even necessarily talking about them, of course, but that stirring up of trusting their intuition, trusting who they are, and following it. That's the goal. That's why I do this. So whether they come to me for money or they want to have a closer relationship with their children, it doesn't matter. It's all about tuning back in and just peeling back the layers of whatever is blocking their divine wisdom. Yeah. And once that's stirred up, look out, because it is a ripple effect and it makes people uncomfortable. Some embrace it depending on where they're at in their journey. And we send unconditional love to everyone, but it doesn't make everybody comfortable. And they make choices and decisions because, let's face it, once you feel that, it is a path you don't want to change, and you deserve to have that path, and you don't want to go backward. Right. And you shouldn't go backward. You just want to keep moving and blossoming and evolving. And you start calling in the people that are aligned with that. And yes, that means some people, their season is over.
Mm-hmm. Their chapter is over.
Yep.
Their chapter's over. Or they do evolve. And, even with my own partner, there were moments in our journey over many, many years where I thought maybe our season's over, and he's evolved and we've evolved. And I'm like, okay, no, we're not. But this was my journey, and we'll see. I really stayed in my power about that. This is what I'm doing, and we'll see if you come along. And if you don't, this is my journey. And I really, really stay true to that after you've gone through something where your true, what you want and your desire, you don't want to settle for anything else.
Yeah.
It's a feeling where, not going to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a gift of age, right? Too, as we get older, we've been through it so much that it's like, I am not going to put up with this anymore.
And the people,
too old and wise at this point. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the people that benefited from women staying small, so people that benefit from that are often the ones that are so uncomfortable when all of a sudden she's rising.
Yeah. And I think we should talk about that, because you brought it up, Christina, and you just did too, as Kate as well, that people sometimes get mad when you begin to change. Like when you start to align with your truth and your light and your essence and your dharma and what you're meant to do, it throws people off. And so you can get pushback. And, I'm curious, Christina, what that looked like for you and how you navigated it, because that can also, I know for me, it stopped me in my tracks. It, put a pause on my growth and development for a period of time, because that people pleasing, I want to make sure everyone's good with me. Oh no, people are upset with me. It paused my evolution. So what was it like for you?
Yeah, it paused my business. It paused my growth, paused my income, honestly, for a while. Particularly, I would say with my family, with my mother, until it doesn't, until you get to that point where you notice it's okay that they're not, I don't need that, until I don't need that approval, and you notice. But it did, especially with social media. I get a lot of my clients, and where I started to notice I'm seeking approval, I'm performing, some of those old patterns were coming back. And when you start to notice and recognize it, I was just able to shift it and clear. I did a lot of mother wound healing and clearing my own relationship. I have 2 boys, adult boys, and a lot of healing, because, most of the time I raised them, I was in a different place in my journey. And so there's a lot of guilt and shame and processing of that. And so just clearing that and recognizing my healing and clearing is only healing and clearing, their future,
Absolutely.
their children's future.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say, hey, I did it that way, and now I'm doing it this way.
And we can make amends throughout our whole life. I think people always feel like, oh, it's too late. I already screwed things up. And it's like, no,
it's never too late.
You can make amends on your deathbed, right? Like it's never too late to, say, look, I was doing the best I could and it wasn't good enough. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I think what was so encouraging was, people, I had so many clients come and just say, people from high school that I hadn't even spoken to in 30 years say, I've just watched your journey and I want to work with you because of that. I just, and they're not reading posts. They don't even know the details, and I thought, really? What? And so that's inspiring, because you don't think that your story or what you've gone through. And so anyone listening, that, we're a community of women helping each other, and whatever we've gone through, it's worth sharing, and it's helping one another. It's helping each other.
Yeah.
And we do learn from each other, and our healing is helping, not just our own family, but our, the collective consciousness. It is making a massive difference.
I really, really, I'm glad you said that. I really believe that that is the sharing of stories, which is why we've loved doing this podcast and hearing other women's stories. The sharing of stories, which I think, you know, historically women did that all the time. They were living in
Yes,
villages and sharing responsibilities and stories and showing up for each other and getting back to, I feel us getting back to that and
Mhm.
seeing the power in that for one another because our stories are, we're connected in so many ways,
We
right? There's only
are.
so many human experiences and we share in so many of those. And so, yeah, I love that you highlighted that. I think that is what's rising. There's a sense of, I'm going to be trite about it, but true sisterhood is
Yes,
honoring and seeing one another and being present for each other. And
y-
so it's beautiful work to be part of and to talk to people like you that are doing it every day, because I think that is our way forward,
it
honestly.
is.
I agree.
There's a group of there's just three of us. We meet every Thursday morning online. One's in New York, one's in another state. I'm in California. We met online in spiritual groups, one through hypnosis, one through another spiritual group. We actually only all three met in person last year, but we've been meeting every Thursday morning for about an hour and a half. And the other day I was just eating, thinking about it's profound how much we've evolved and support each other. But I was just thinking, what is it that we do that's so magical? And we just see each other. We just
Yes.
witness each other.
Yep.
And I was thinking, you know, men don't do this, and not even all women don't see the value of this because we started it. I think we said we're going to do a mastermind together and help each other with our businesses or something. And that lasted maybe one session. And and then it turned into sort of a spiritual thing. And now we literally just each get a turn and tell each other what's going on in our lives and give each other feedback. We usually somebody cries and we share, we laugh, we do whatever we want to do. And it's we just see each other.
Yeah.
This
Mhm.
is profound. I mean, I have had the
Profound.
shifts, the biggest shifts. I have paid big dollars for groups, and this is just the three of us for free get together. And, there could be a campfire, right? Centuries
Right.
ago doing this.
Yeah. I have the exact same thing, Christina. I was on a retreat in Mexico and met women just for like 5 days. And there's two of them. One lives in Mexico, one lives in North Carolina. And we meet, I call it my Mexico group, once every 6 weeks. And it's the same process. One of us shares, and you don't get interrupted. Nobody makes comments. Like you get your time and you just express everything that's going on. They listen, and then you can even say, yeah, I'd like some feedback. And then they, give us feedback and then the next person does it. But it's exactly what you said. It's when you're seen and heard and
Mhm.
witnessed, it's magical, it's
Oh, I just get
miraculous. And
goosebumps
we
even
all
describing it.
have
Yeah.
that capacity. It doesn't take, it doesn't take any special degree, right? We're
Right.
just witnessing and we're not, you know,
Yeah.
telling them what to do. We're just with
Right.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a CEO during COVID, and one of
Mm.
the things I desperately needed was to not feel so alone in leading during that time. And so I put a call out to my colleagues in the community that I knew were leading things. And I just invited them under the guise of let's talk about burnout. But really what I wanted was like to not be alone at that time and to
Yeah.
have community. And it was the same thing. And my prefaced it with, we'll meet 4 times, no pressure, just come if you can. And we jumped online as everything was on Zoom. And we got to the fourth meeting, which had turned into, we referenced the book a few times and then we just, just like you said, we moved off that and we were just there for each other. And the fourth time came and everyone was like, why are we quitting? Why are we done? Why did we have to be done? And I
Yeah.
put that on there just not to make it open ended. And so we didn't quit. We kept
Yeah.
going. And
Yeah.
it's like it's the power in it is so hard to explain, but
Right.
it's felt so deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the vulnerability too, don't you think that
Oh,
you allow
Yeah.
yourself to be seen and vulnerable. You shared depth.
Yeah.
And I think our parents before us didn't do that.
No.
No. And
All surface.
yeah, we sort of laugh every time we get on there. We say, I really don't have anything to share. And then we start talking. And
There's
before
always something.
we start
Always.
crying or we start talking about something pretty important to us, very quickly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, can I just ask, one of the things you really help with women with is self-sabotage. And I would love for you to share, how do we stop doing that? Why do we do it and how do we stop doing that?
You know, one, get curious, let's just sort of get curious. I think we beat ourselves up about whatever we're sabotaging. It's so easy for us to say, I should know better. The criticism comes in. So I think just being aware first, but let's get to the root of why. Why are we doing it? And knowing that it believes the reason, and there are many reasons, but it believes it's doing a good job. It believes it's protecting us. And there isn't a time we speak to the part. Let's see, I was just speaking. I even do work with young children, a little 9-year-old girl I was working with, and she acts up in school. It's very sabotaging behavior. She's like, I was sassy in school. And we talked to the part, and it says, if you're too chipper and happy, you're going to get squashed. It's sabotaging her. And so why? Well, there was a moment when she was squashed when she was happy and chipper, a mean teacher. And so this part thinks it's doing a great job for her by doing this. The part thinks she's still 6. She's almost 10. If she wasn't working on this, she'd soon be 20, 30, 40.
Exactly. And still have it.
Yeah. Right.
And she'd be sassy at work and not, whatever it involves, it pushing men, love away, whatever love looks like, or relationships or her children, or not letting people in. So this is, snowballs, whatever that is. So just getting to the root of how is it protecting us? It's avoiding rejection, and we all need connection, whether it's in a circle or whatever it might be. And we're going to avoid rejection at all costs. It's a primal need to have connection. So that sabotage is avoiding rejection, and it's fierce.
Yes.
It's pretty clever.
Yeah, it really is. You also have talked a lot about boundaries, setting boundaries for success. And tell us about that. Because again, I think it's something that we've all heard the term, we know we need them. But it's still, for women especially, because we are also used to connectivity, and we're used to pleasing, and we're used to caring, that sometimes that setting of boundaries can be more challenging. So, how do you bring that in with people?
Yeah, of course, everything's about getting to the root of why the boundaries aren't there, the people pleasing, we know all these things, but I like to just present it like the energetics of boundaries, and look at it like look at boundaries like, what are you available for and what are you not available for? So, again, it's this fear of rejection or feeling of I'm not enough and wanting connection, because when we're people pleasing and we're seeking approval outside of us, then, I was definitely had no boundaries. A lot of clients or a lot of us, we think boundaries, I think in my 20s, 30s, 40s, I thought it was being loud or sharp or edgy.
Mm.
But when we shift to, well, what am I available for? And a great lesson is, I'm not available for taking on other people's energy and trying to fix it. That's a huge one. I'm not available for a dumping ground of other people's problems or emotions when they're in a bad mood. So I can say now, gosh, I can see you need a little space, and I'm going to go upstairs and put some laundry away. And when you're done, I'm going to come back and, we'll see how it is. So, you know, instead of feeling like it's personal or whatever it may be, so what are you available for? And what are you not available for? I think it's easier than, making it tricky. And every day, I grew up having to navigate, as many of us did, having to navigate a million emotions and trying to fix them. And so this is literally something I have to ask myself to this day. What am I available for? Well, I'm not available for trying to fix that client's problems, or my partner's problems, or whatever it might be, the world's problems.
Totally.
And let me just put that energy back out there.
I love that term.
I do too.
Being available.
And as a highly sensitive, it's so interesting because you were, you in those first 10 years, you had a lot of abuse and a lot of chaotic environment. And that often does create, like you said, a hypersensitive young person who's highly vigilant, because that's how you start to stay safe. And that hypersensitivity does carry. And again, I think there's so many people with that are so in tune with their environment, but they are constantly taking on other people's stuff. And processing it through themselves, because that's all they've known. So this idea of like, I don't have to be available for that. Maybe I don't have to do that is, I think, really helpful.
Yeah. And I work with a lot of empaths and intuitives and so on. And I even think it's like, I'm empathic. There's a pride and I feel everyone's emotions. Well, that's okay, but you don't have to take on everyone's emotions, and learning even how do you even do that? It's actually why I learned Reiki. When I first started doing this work, I actually started getting really sick and nauseous, and I'd have to run to the bathroom. And I thought, oh goodness, I quit corporate and now I get sick and I can't do this. And so I learned Reiki to understand energy and separate my energy. And it helped quite a bit. But a lot of highly sensitive people, when it's a skill that's helped you navigate, you don't want to not feel everything else. So what would it mean if I don't feel everyone else's energy? How would I survive? That's my identity. So to say I'm not available for everyone else's energy would almost mean I'm giving up my toolbox. So that's a big deal, to learn how do you navigate without feeling everybody else's energy. So you still can be sensitive, but you're not trying to fix or take it on. I'm not available to carry the weight of your energy, the sadness that you feel, the anger that you feel.
Right. But you are maybe available to hold space for someone and to be present.
Yeah.
What's the tool that you love the most in terms of your own growth and development, and or what you work with clients with?
No, there's a tool that was taught to me. It's a pivoting tool. And, both of you know now, you get more of what you feel. And so when we're sort of spiraling out into whatever it might be, stress or anxiety, or I don't know what to say, I have to talk to this person or whatever it might be, is just closing your eyes and thinking of a moment in the last day or two where, let's say, you need to feel safe or calm or joyful, or you're stressing about money and just feeling secure. Think of a moment in the last 24 hours, 48 hours where you felt that. So where you felt approval or you felt safety. And it might be a moment where you were petting your dog or talking to a friend, or you smiled at a woman at a coffee shop and you picked your favorite donut or whatever. It doesn't have to be this profound moment. And just allow yourself to feel that moment, like at a cellular level. Let the energy of that moment come into your body, and then feel what you're talking about, what you were thinking. So then go back and approach, okay, now let me think about the thing. And you will feel different about it because you've changed your energy at a cellular level. And so you can pivot very, very quickly. You can do this before a meeting. I just had a pretty emotional conversation with my son, and before it, I was like, okay, well, hold on. Let me go back to a moment where I felt really grounded and really calm and just doop, and I was able to have it.
Oh,
I do love that.
I do too.
Because you're right, energy can shift on a dime. It can shift so quickly. But when we're stuck in a negative energetic setting or situation or just mindset, we could stay in that for years, literally. So, right, like the idea of the fact that we do have this agency to actually shift our energy in a really efficient way.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's a great tool.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Myself
I
today.
hope all of our listeners do
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Well, it has been so much fun to talk with you. I feel
Great
so
to
much
meet these
connected.
like-minded people. That's the power. That's speaking of energy. That's the power of energy, right? You start to vibrate at a certain level and you start to be curious about certain things and you just keep finding these people all over the world, right? The clients that come to you, the people we find for this podcast, it's a pretty powerful phenomenon, I think, that you get what you're emitting essentially. Yeah. Well, we would love to. Let's finish with our one big final question that we ask all of our guests. And then we want to know more about where people can find you and if someone wants to work with you, where they can find out. But Kate and I have been so inspired by Women Who Run with the Wolves, which is such a classic book. And she has a beautiful idea in there that when we choose to move, there are these certain doors that take us into the life of the wild woman or the world of the wild woman. And so we're curious, Christina, from you, which of these doors might you have taken into your life as a wild woman?
Yeah. So if you have an old story, that is a door. If you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you can almost not bear it, that is a door. And if you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life, that is a door. So is there one that you lean into or feel connected to?
Yeah, I think the old story definitely was a door into remembering that I always had magic. I always had trust in myself, and tuning into was a doorway to trusting my intuition and voice and power. And so that journey was absolutely a beautiful doorway just back into remembering who I am and what I'm here to do.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Where
Can we find you?
So my website, Instagram, everything is ChristinaLWoods.com.
Beautiful. And tell us the ideal type of client you work with, because there might be one of those people listening today. What's the type of person that you feel like you really are skilled or sort of focused in on?
Yeah, I work with women who juggle a lot, women who are moving into their next levels. So it doesn't necessarily have to be entrepreneurs or women in the corporate world. They could be stay-at-home moms, but really just want something more in their life. So they feel like, gosh, I have all these things going on, but something feels like it's missing. And I know there's like this hunger or something jiggling inside of me, and I want to find it. I want to bust out and just get there. So
Great.
Well, we'll put all this information in the show notes too, so you can find her. And it's just been a joy talking with you. And I feel so much connection with our stories and your story. So we had that moment today too of just really connecting.
And what we talked about earlier is that what were we doing today? We're just witnessing each other, and the power of that and the power of your story to go out and have all these other women listen to it. I do think this is how we're making these positive ripples of change in this chaotic world that we're living in.
Yeah.
You guys were wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
you.
Christina. It was great today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.